What's up, cats? Today I'll be talking about how to get trombone players to like you. Well, like playing your music at least. When it comes to getting interesting parts in a big band chart, trombones usually get the short end of the stick. Consistently relegated to backgrounds and pads, the saxophone section might play more eighth notes in a single chart than the trombone does on the entire concert. Just because the trombone isn't as well suited to playing fast as almost all the other instruments in the band, doesn't mean they can't at all. But I don't know how the trombone works. Okay, just ask a trombone player. Or you can watch the rest of this video at least. The key to writing good trombone parts is to find a good middle ground between this and this. The faster the line, the less you're going to want to write parts that involve them moving the slide a lot. This is accomplished by keeping your trombone parts largely in the upper register. The notes are closer together in this range, which means they move the slide less, resulting in an easier time playing quickly. Let's take a quick look at an Elliott Mason clip as an example. Along with transcribing the line, I've also included the slide positions under the notes. The line stays exclusively within the first 4 positions of the trombone, and most of the time it only changes one slide position, with an occasional change of 2. The line also stays almost entirely in the lead range of the trombone, which I would consider to be high E to high C. This is the biggest difference between trumpets and trombones. While trumpets should only play at the top of their range at the high moments of the chart, trombone actually stays in the upper register for most of it. One very common mistake I see in younger writers is scoring their trombone parts too low. Lead and second trombone should basically never be in the staff at all, and if they are in the staff, they definitely shouldn't be harmonized. This sounds bad due to what is known as lower interval limits. The intervals you see on screen are the lowest an interval can be played without it sounding muddy. There isn't a single note above the staff on this graph. So, if you keep lead and second above the staff, with third staying around the staff, going slightly above or in, and fourth pretty much staying exclusively in the staff, you won't have to worry about this. Trombone has the same variety as mutes as trumpet, but most of them don't see as much use. The only 2 commonly used are the plunger mute or the bucket mute. The bucket mute actually does see a lot of use as it gives the trombone player a more mellow sound, and as far as I know, there's no such thing as a trombone flugel. Alright, bucket mute it is. Bucket mute is mainly used in ballads or in lower intensity sections of a chart. It isn't like muted trumpet where you can pair it with basically any other instrument. You can also just ask your trombonist to play into the stands if you want a muted sound, but there isn't enough time in the chart for them to put the mute in or take it out. Some trombonists will also just play into the stand instead of using a bucket mute, usually because they forgot to bring the mute to the gig, or out of laziness. You know who you are. While one might think the approach to writing tenor and bass trombone would be very similar, the approach you should take to writing each of them are essentially the opposite. Tenor has one of the largest ranges out of all the instruments in the band, while also having one of the smallest ranges of notes that you want to be heard. While anything below an E certainly isn't a bad sound, it won't really have the same resonance as the range of E to D. While with bass trombone, you very rarely go above the staff, as this can cause balance issues, and they don't have the same quality of tone that the tenor trombone does in this register. The main area you see the 2 instruments overlap are in chord voicings. I'll be going over this in a future video, but the short version is that for big chords, trombone should always be playing the 3rd and 7th of the chord, and the lower these can be without being too far away from the rest of the band, the better. Think of it like building a pyramid. The lower the 3rd and 7th are, the bigger the bass, and the easier it will be to stack things on top of it. The low register of the tenor trombone should mostly be used as a lower voice in chords, as while it does a good job supporting the low end of the chord, on its own it just sounds very dull. You also have to be careful about using these notes in moving lines, as since they're lower, they'll involve more slide movement. B in the staff is particularly notorious among trombone players, as it forces you to go all the way out to 7th position, defeating any chance of playing a line quickly. While playing in the high register of the trombone isn't nearly as exhausting as trumpet, you should still be careful with how you voice it in this register. C is the highest note within the expected range of the lead trombonist. When they play in harmony with other sections, and trombone isn't the lead voice, I like to limit them to an A. It's a bit easier on their chops, and you don't really need them to go up to a C if you can't hear the line anyways. You should only use D flat and above for moments you want to highlight the sound in the trombone section, as anything above C is significantly more taxing on the embouchure. Great for trombone solos or ensemble passages led by trombone, otherwise, no point. Especially in its lowest register, you can think of bass trombone almost like a reverse lead trumpet. While the lead trumpet adds intensity by playing extremely high, the bass trombone adds intensity by playing extremely low. Also, lead trumpet should never have any issues playing a high C, just like bass trombone should never have any issues playing a low C. Any notes beyond that are more based on the skill of the player, but if they mainly play bass trombone, they should be able to get a good amount of volume on notes below a low C. There's also not really any need to use this register except for the most intense moments of the chart, as it's pretty much impossible to play in this register quietly. Unlike lead trumpet, you can have bass trombone play super low in intense sections and in the normal range in other sections of the chart. Playing in this extremely low register is not particularly hard for the embouchure, with the main concern instead being having enough air to play these low notes. This means that the bass trombonist doesn't have to save his chops for the big moments, and can instead support the band in other sections in between playing low notes. One of the biggest strengths of the trombone is that its highest register does not require the same amount of volume as it does on the trumpet. A trombonist playing a high C can play their notes significantly quieter than trumpet playing a high C, so you can use the full range of the instrument at any point in the chart. This is another reason they commonly occupy the background role, as you can write them in any register, and trombones will be able to play them at the dynamic you want them to. You do have to be careful with the extreme highs, however, as these are a bit harder to balance. Another consideration with the high range is endurance. While trombone spends most of the chart in the upper register, it should not play up here with no breaks at all. You really want to avoid giving trombones extended pad sections over E, as this is the most tiring range for the trombone section. If you give them moving lines and breaks in the part sometimes, they'll have no problems playing your chart. But if you just give them whole notes over E for the entire song, you might not want to check your mailbox for a couple days. This is a very common misstep on ballads, where trombones will often just have wall-to-wall footballs, completely destroying their faces and their sanity. Short stabs of phrases that imply the harmony with lots of rest in between are much more forgiving to the chops, and are usually more interesting than just sitting on a bunch of whole notes anyways. Trombone can play fast, you just need to approach how you do so carefully. As stated in Gary Lindsay's book Jazz Arranging Techniques, do not underestimate the agility of a trombone. They can play moving lines, but they will almost always be unison as opposed to harmonized. If you listen to songs with extended trombone solos, you'll notice it's almost fully unison, with chords only happening on high, long notes. There's a couple reasons for this, and both are caused by trombone solos featuring more than the lead range of the instrument. Even though E to C is the ideal lead range, a solo where you limit yourself to just these notes would get really boring really quickly, so solos go into the staff more than lead parts would. Where the issues come from is trying to voice chords down there. Not only do they sound extremely muddy, but since they're in the lower range, they also require a lot more slide movement, significantly limiting the speed at which they can be played. Trombone and guitar work very well together, especially if the guitar is using overdrive or some other effects pedal. This is because the best range of the guitar is very similar to the best range of the trombone, so they complement each other naturally. While not a big band album, you can hear a lot of this pairing in John Hadamia's album More Than Anything, which I would consider extremely influential in my approach as a writer. Trombone and alto work together for pretty much the same reason, and funnily enough, is also heard a lot on that album. Barry, bass trombone, bass, and left-hand piano is a very standard grouping. The weight this group gives the band is highly adjustable, and is mostly based on the interval between the Barry and bass trombone. The weakest interval is a fifth, as the harmony slightly lowers the dynamic. This is mostly used in modal charts to emulate the left hand of the piano. Unison is a bit stronger, and is also the default for playing bass ostinatos, as it being in fifths can make them harder to follow. For the most intense sections of the chart, you can drop the bass trombone an octave below the Barry, as the difference in octaves will make the note stand out even more. Going back to the earlier pyramid example, this is the fifth, this is the unison, and this is the octave unison. The octave unison should not be used lightly, as while used correctly it can add to the big moments. If it's used incorrectly, it can leave the band wondering why you even bothered in the first place. Overall, The trombone is a very versatile instrument. Versatile. Use it for more than just backgrounds and pads, please. I've listened to so many charts where they don't even do anything at all. Why even bother at that point? Other instruments in the band can hold out long notes too. It's not like the trombones are the only instrument in the band that can do that. And actually, doesn't it make more sense for the saxophones to hold out long notes anyway, since they don't have to worry about embouchure in the same way that brass does? Like seriously, why does saxophone have solos like everyone?